Welcome to the Australian Hiker Podcast, Australia's longest running hiking podcast, downloaded over 1.2 million times worldwide and providing you with an Australian perspective on all things hiking. We're your hosts, Tim and Jill Savage, coming to you from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country.
In this week's episode 321, brought to you by the Adventure Gene, we talk with hiker Lindy Saylor about her journey on the Via Gebennensis, the Way of Geneva. We hope you enjoy. If you'd like to help support Australian Hiker and this podcast, there are a couple of ways that you can help us out. Firstly, by subscribing on your podcast host of choice so that each episode is available as soon as it's published. And if you have the opportunity, leave us a 5-star review. Another way to support us is go to the Australian Hiker website at www.australianhiker.com.au and click on the supporters page and buy us a coffee. You can do a one-off donation or become a monthly supporter. All donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue producing this podcast and blog. Now let's get on to today's episode. In episode 317, we talked about the Camino del Norte and the Camino Primitivo. But have you ever heard of the 350-kilometre Via Gebennensis, also known as the Way of Geneva? I certainly hadn't. This set me on a mission to find out more about this European hiking trail, and the walk was actually only designed in the 1990s with the aim of guiding walkers from Switzerland, Austria and Germany to Le Puy, which is where you set off for the traditional pilgrimage of the Way of St. James, also known as the Camino Francis. In this interview, we catch up with hiker Lindy Saylor to find out more about her journey on the Via Gebennensis to see what she thought of this trail. Lindy, thanks for taking the time to chat with us about your journey on the Via Gebennensis.
Thank you. Actually, it's really a wonderful chance to talk about walking without seeing all my poor friends' eyes glaze over. So thank you for the opportunity of talking about it.
No, that's fair enough. Now, before we talk about your trip itself, give us a bit about your hiking background. What do you do, where are you from, and what are the key hikes that define what you do?
All right. So I'm from the mid-north coast of New South Wales in a little town called Gebennensis. I'm retired now, have been properly retired all this year. So that's great. It releases me to do whatever I want. But I am busy at home. I grow most of my own food. So my hiking background, it probably started about 20 years ago with doing the Great Ocean Walk. And I just fell in love with it. So most of my walks for the first few years were full pack walks, which I really enjoy. I love that feeling of being out of society for several days and, just being out of society for a few days and in control of everything that I've got on my back is everything I need. So I started then. I did a lot of full pack walks. I've done some long ones and some short ones then, but I also have done some Caminos overseas and other longer walks. So I suppose I prefer a long walk rather than a short one.
Oh, that's fair enough. That's good. Okay, now I need to ask, was this your first European experience or have you done other European trails as well?
I have done a few. I've done the Portuguese walk from Lisbon to Santiago. I've done I did the Freedom Walk. I'm not sure if you know about that one, which is through the ex-Soviet countries, which was lovely. I've done a few European walks. I've done some other overseas walks, but they're the main ones. I had done the Le Puy to St. Jean-Pied-de-Port walk, actually to Pamplona walk before as well.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. No, we had done a podcast on the Freedom Walk a few years ago. So it's one of those things where people either know it or they don't. But it's a good opportunity to do something a bit different. Yes,
it was very good. I've also just to add to it, I have walked the Annapurna Trail and the Lycian Way, and they're worth mentioning because I love the Lycian Way. That was beautiful in Turkey.
Okay, no, that's good. And strangely enough, in the coming weeks, we will actually be doing an interview on the Lycian Way as well.
Fabulous. I look forward to hearing someone else's experience on that, yeah.
Okay, now, in the introduction to this podcast, I talked a bit about the Via Gebennensis, and pretty much it sounds like it was designed to be able to allow you to start off in Geneva and then hit the start of the Camino Frances. How did you actually come across this walk? I mean, was it something that someone mentioned to you, or you just came across it by accident?
I got it from when I walked the Le Puy-en-Velay walk from people I met who had walked from Geneva and before Geneva on that walk. That was several years ago. So I knew there was a walk that way.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was going to say, I mean, the more you start looking and researching, the more you find. And, and I think for people like us in Australia, we typically have to fly in from somewhere and make our way to the start of the walk in the case of the Camino Frances. But I think the assumption is that, okay, we will start the walk here in Le Puy, or Santiago if you decide you're going to do it backwards. But it's the sort of thing that, a lot of Europeans don't necessarily take it that way, and for the sake of roughly an extra 350 kilometres, you might choose to start in Geneva and extend the walk to give you an additional probably week and a half to 2 weeks worth of hiking on top of the Camino Frances.
Yes, and in fact, I didn't intend to start from Geneva when I first planned this. I was going to walk the Le Puy walk again, and I thought, maybe I should walk 3 days before that just to see what it's like. And I could do that. I could get to a town. It's just a little bit tricky, so I sort of looked a bit further. I thought, I'll blow it. I'll just start from Geneva. So that's how I did it. I had really no real idea of what it was going to be like. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good. What were your expectations with this trip prior to starting? I mean, did you have a picture in your mind, or was it just going to be more of the same that you were used to?
I knew it would be pretty because I'd heard about that area nearby, around the Annecy area, which is fairly close. So I knew it would be pretty, and I knew it would be hilly. I actually thought it might be a bit too hilly for me, but I'm 68, by the way, so I'm starting to try and choose my walks to my age, really. So I knew it'd be that. So my expectations that it would be pretty and that it'd be hilly, and that was about it. I think that was my expectations.
Okay. Now, the Via Gebennensis is approximately 350 kilometres. You were used to doing that sort of distance?
Oh, yes. Yes, I am used to doing that sort of distance. And in fact, I didn't stop at Le Puy. I went on to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. So I did probably my longest walk ever, which, it is 1,100 kilometres all up. Okay. So I like long walks, especially if you, as you know, flying to Europe. It's a long way to go. You may as well do a long walk.
Yeah, take advantage of it. You've already paid for the airfare, so you might as well take advantage of it.
Right.
As far as duration's concerned, so with this Via Gebennensis, how long did you expect to take to do this walk, and how long did it actually take you?
I thought I would take about 17 days. I had hoped to I wanted to do it actually with shorter days at the start, but I had a little bit of difficulty getting information on accommodation at first. But it actually took me 18 days, which was nice.
Okay, so originally you were planning on roughly 20 kilometres a day as a guide.
Yes. That's my preferred distance. I find after that, even when I'm really fit, I just am ready to stop, just do something different for the rest of the day. So 20 kilometres is nice for me. I know a lot of other people like to do a lot further, but that's what I like.
That's all right. No, that's good. Now, is this a self-guided type of hike, or are you better off travelling with an organised group?
Self-guided, I think. I think it might be difficult to find an organisation that assists you with that. There probably is one, but I had a quick look around it and didn't see one. That would take a bit more research, I think.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. And is this
Not that I'm good at research. I'm terrible at research.
Well,
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing. I'm an obsessive researcher, but I mean I know other people just like to turn up and say, "Oh, we'll work it out on the day." So,
Yes. Yeah.
um, so is this did you do this walk as a self-supported trip where you carried everything, or were you just carrying a day pack and you were staying in accommodation, or did you send your bags through? What was the story there?
All right. I stayed at accommodation. I did carry everything on my back, but I was very frugal with what I put into that backpack. I got myself a good size, but also a good day pack that had a frame. So I actually didn't feel the weight on my back. I carried 7 kilos, which was just really clothes and a little bit of food and whatever. I wanted it to be less. I wanted it to be less, but I couldn't get it down any further.
7 kilos is pretty good.
Yes, I thought it was okay. I would have liked to be one of those people who can live their life on 5 kilo or something. Yeah.
I was going to say that leads us into talking about gear, but so did you carry a tent and sleeping bag, or the expectation was you were going to stay in accommodation?
Yeah, no, I knew I was going to stay in accommodation, so I didn't carry a tent or sleeping bag. I did carry a sleeping bag liner, just a silk one, and a pillowcase actually, in case I needed it.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
That was all I carried. Yeah.
All right. Now, so you had a good day pack. Now, what sort of size day pack did you work with?
Oh, Tim, I don't know. It was. I'm so sorry. It wasn't tiny. It was. I could carry it on as carry-on luggage in the flight.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. I was going to say. So, what about any other specialized gear? Was it pretty much standard? Did you use tracking poles, or did you carry stoves at all, or it was just pretty much what you had and that was it?
Yeah, I just carried my poles. Very necessary. There were some muddy spots probably later on in the walk, and some very rocky sections later on the walk. In all the track, the track was actually beautiful, but there were occasional spots where it was very good to have trekking poles, and I like using them anyhow. And we're going up and down hills, so it does help a lot doing that. Other gear, I had an umbrella, a trekking umbrella. It was just a light one with a silver on the outside.
Yep.
So it's reflective against sun as well. And I did use that and much preferred it to a jacket. Personally, that's what I preferred.
All right. No, that's fair enough. Now, since you raised it, what was the environment like? So, at 350 Ks, so you'd expect there to be some variation across all the days you were doing this trip. So give us an indication of the sort of environments you were coming across over your 18 days.
Oh, yes. It was beautiful, by the way. The whole walk was beautiful. You pass through pretty towns and the countryside's beautiful. So it was hilly. I think a person I asked about it before I left said there's one big climb a day. So it was hilly. At times there was forest. You walked through beautiful, beautiful forest. Sometimes you were on top of what I would call like a plateau, which is clear pasture land, and you could look down to the Rhone Valley and see the Rhone River, absolutely stunning. And to the other side, you could often see the Swiss Alps covered with snow, which was beautiful. It was lovely. A lot of what we would probably consider forestry trails in Australia. There was a lot of that sort of trail walking, and some smaller ones as well, and a little bit of road walking, but not very much.
All right, so that brings us to, you were expecting to stay in accommodation. So what sort of accommodation did you use? Was it hostels or hotels or homestays, or a bit of a combination?
They're pretty much, mostly I stayed in homestays. I'm not sure this is the correct pronunciation, AQL. So some of them were Donativo and some of them they had a set price. And they were lovely. Beautiful accommodation in a lot of places. A couple of times you probably would have been in a dorm, but there were so few people walking. It I was pretty much there on my own with a host or hostess or their family. And it was that sort of situation. You'd have a room and often an ensuite. It was very nice, actually.
Okay, and what's the accommodation pricing like over there? I've got no idea. I've only ever stayed in capital cities when I've gone through Europe. So,
Yes.
is it comparable to Australian prices, or is it expensive or cheap?
Well, thankfully, it was much cheaper than Australian prices, even because our dollar's not very good at the moment. So it was between 40 and 50 euro a day, but with that, you would get a meal, and I'll say the food. It was like a 3-course meal, simple food, but 3-course meal at night, and in the morning you get the bread and jam basically for breakfast and coffee and tea. But in Australia, you'd get nothing like that. For that sort of price, you wouldn't actually be able to get a room, I don't think. So.
I must admit, the first time I came across bread and jam for breakfast was actually in South America, and apparently it's driven by the US market. And it's like bread and jam is typically not something I eat for breakfast and haven't done for a long time. But bit of sugar, bit of calories to get you going and get you started for the day until you decide you want to stop at a coffee shop or a cafe along the way. So
yes, and don't forget the bowl of coffee. That's fabulous. Yes.
Good coffee?
I think in any country you need to drink the coffee. I'm a bit of a coffee snob, my sisters tell me. I think in any country you need to drink the coffee how that country drinks the coffee. So I love their coffee, but I had it black and just how most of the French drink it. So I enjoyed it very much.
Okay. Well, that leads us on to our next question: food. So, what was your food situation? So you were staying in hostels. So I mean, as far as breakfasts, lunch, and dinner, and for that matter, morning and afternoon tea, what did you do for those?
All right. So before I left, I had heard that, especially at the beginning of the walk, that you often wouldn't have fine food in the middle of the day. And in France, often everything is closed anyhow in the middle of the day. They seem to have nice public holiday many times a year. Love their work balance. So I actually took some trekking food for lunch, which was really basically just peanut butter and Vita-Wheat biscuits in my pack. And that actually lasted me all the way to St. John Peter Paul because I didn't need it much. If I passed a patisserie, I would pick up either a quiche or a sandwich, which is basically a baguette, or usually with ham on it, I would say.
Yep.
That was for lunch. So breakfast, as I say, breakfast and dinner were provided, so I didn't have to think about that. You could carry extra food if you wanted it for snacks. I didn't really, because I didn't really need it, frankly. But people carried biscuits and chocolate later on in the walk when I did meet people after the end of this walk. So, yeah, but basically I just carried something very simple for lunch that would fill me if I needed it.
I must admit, the baguettes that you get in France, we went to France doing a driving trip a number of years ago, and we'd stop in at the service station and get a baguette and prosciutto and camembert cheese, and it was just. I'm guessing it was probably what they considered to be their junk food, but it was really spectacular sort of way to do breakfast or lunch for a day.
Yes, their bread is very good, but I have to say after bread and jam for breakfast every day, sometimes I was looking for something a bit different, and sometimes there were actually little restaurants and cafes you could stop off at and have something, but then then you have to walk after eating a fairly big lunch, so do it all.
So from your suggestion then is carry something like peanut butter or something, then just in case you don't find anything. But in most cases, you'd hit a cafe or a little restaurant roughly at the right sort of time.
No, I think what I would say that mostly you wouldn't see a cafe or restaurant at the right time. Mostly you would pick up something in the town you were leaving from, if you were leaving in the town that had a boulangerie or a cafe.
Okay.
So I think, I didn't have to eat my peanut butter and spider wheat very often, but I was very glad I had it with me when I did need it.
All right. No, that's good to know. It's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So what about the water situation? So was there, a lot of these European towns have spigots and fountains you can collect water at, but what about, so I'm guessing you would have been able to pick up water at your accommodation before you left, and was there enough water along the trail if it was hot or you decided you needed more?
Yes, you could occasionally run into, as you say, a spigot with potable water. I always carried enough for the day. I don't know, I just didn't want to risk running out of water. And they did say, again, I did get to speak to someone about the walk, and they said for the first 3 or 4 days you may not find water during the day on the walk. So I didn't even look for it, frankly, because I had enough water in my pack. But there are spigots and things along the way and fountains, and you might walk to a little town and be able to pick up water there.
All right.
And I suppose you could probably, if you did pass a farm or a farmhouse, if you did, you could always go in and, in your French, ask for some water or make gagging faces or something.
Yeah. Now, I was going to say that raises a question. Is there a guidebook, or what information were you using as you went?
Yes, there is a guidebook, which, thank goodness, it's written in Spanish and German, but it's got enough information in picture form that you can work with it and use it. It's called the Yellow Guide, and you get it from I think it's called let's have a look here. It's called the Association Rhône-Alpes d'Amis de Saint-Jean. So that's who you get it from. But if you look up Yellow Guide via Gebennensis, I think you would find it on Google and find your way to a place you could buy that.
Okay, no, that's it's one of these sort of things, as you say, you get so used to these days, particularly with the bigger trails, having things like the Far Out app, and in all honesty, I don't know whether the Far Out does actually have a trail app for this one, but just having that information just in case you decide you're wanting to say, oh, what's in the next town? Do I, am I going to stop here or am I going to do something else? So
yes. I did download the Bronze app, but it didn't have any information on it except for distances, basically, and difficulty. The app I used didn't have any accommodation information. I used the All Trails app to help me on my way because I'm renowned for getting lost, especially leaving cities, which I did. I think I got left the trail about 12 times leaving Geneva. I think my eye wasn't in. There's fabulous signage all along the way, but leaving a city is always difficult. So the All Trails app helped me out there. But there was no information on accommodation in any of the apps I could see. So I got the Yellow Guide, and it was perfectly adequate.
Yeah, I think it's one of those sort of things that in a lot of cases, getting out of the city, or particularly when you're dealing with the bigger cities or towns, that's where you have problems. It's on the trail. You seem to be fine. So that's good to know. I was going to say that brings us on to you were saying the guidebooks in Spanish and French. Do you speak French at all? And is it necessary, or you can generally get away with some sign language and some poorly broken English in a lot of cases?
Okay, so the guidebook's actually in Spanish and German, not even French. So I have schoolgirl French but we're going back 50 years. 50 years. So I have pretty much no French. I have enough to be able to book accommodation, which I think is very useful. You could always use a Google Translator probably for that.
Yep.
As I went along, my French got better. The only awkwardness was actually at the AQL, where the lovely host or hostess would sit and eat dinner with you and try and make conversation. But we had a lot of laughs together in that, because they'd have poor English perhaps. and I'd have much poorer French. And I don't know, it's fun. I actually enjoy that side of things, usually trying to communicate with poor language skills. Mm.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
You would be better off if you could speak French. You would you'd be able to have conversation with people, and a lot of people do language education apps before they go. I didn't, and I managed quite well, and I had fun. So yeah.
Now, take us through a typical day on trail, from waking up in the morning to going to bed at night time.
Well, I would get up. Good start. Usually just go straight. I sort of mostly pack, go to breakfast, finish packing, and leave. You don't have to leave early, because especially at the time I left, I actually went from early April, and I found the days are quite long, so there's no rush to go. But I was generally on the track by 8 or 8:30, just because I'm an early person. And then I would just walk. I would take lots of breaks. So I always take a Kindle with me on my hike. I think that's part of my essential equipment. And I'd stop and read a book several times during the day and just hike until 3, 4 o'clock. Mostly the accommodation wasn't open till 3 or 4 o'clock anyhow, so you didn't want to rush. Yeah, get in and go crash out on the bed, and especially at the beginning. Sometimes fall on the bed, spread eagle, and lie there for 40 minutes or something.
Yeah. So what time were you typically going to bed each day?
Well, dinner wasn't until 7 or 7:30, so I'd have dinner and basically just get ready for bed and go to bed and read in bed.
Yeah,
I was pretty tired at the beginning, because as I say, I'm not 24 anymore, so I was quite happy to just lie in bed. Some people later on in the walk, and I got fitter too, past Le Puy. After I did that, we'd often walk around town and have a look and things like that. But I was often too tired. So,
yeah. No, that's fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a fair weather hiker? Well, maybe it's time to think outside the box. Canberra-based outdoor company Adventure Gene is now running snow camping tours through the Australian Alps that will teach you snow camping and snowshoeing skills, and at the same time provide a unique and authentic wilderness experience. These trips are primarily aimed at people who have some hiking experience and are looking to try out winter travel under the care of enthusiastic, friendly and professional guides that focus on quality service in small groups. In addition to having an amazing trip, Adventure Dream trips include the use of world-class gear, great food and four-wheel drive transport to make your winter adventure as seamless as possible. So if you're looking at getting outdoors and doing something just that little bit different, then maybe a snow camping trip from Adventure Gene is the way to go. Now onto the experience itself. So what is there to love about this trail? And I was going to say, and was there one section that was better than others? Do you have a favourite section?
I was trying to think about if I had a favourite section. I don't think I did. I think if I had to say maybe the beginning, but I loved the whole walk. It was absolutely stunning, beautiful countryside. It was easy walking, and saying that the trails weren't overgrown or very technical or anything like that. They weren't too easy, but that was something I enjoy, not having to negotiate too many rock climbs and things like that on a walk. So there was nothing like that. For me, I love the isolation of it. I really enjoy walking on my own without a lot of people around me, and it's something I really liked. I did run into some other hikers, but I didn't see many. Now, that might not suit people. In fact, I knew of a lady who was walking behind me, had a little bit of a foot injury, but she said she was just lonely. So I think that's something you have to think about if you're doing the walk. If you enjoy walking on your own all day and seeing people, but not really relating to them and things like that, because a lot of people who do Caminos, one of the things they love is the friends they make along the way, and that's really enjoyable too. But I loved being on my own, and yeah, so waking up to the bird song, walking through. There's a lot of bird song.
Yep.
On that walk. Loved that. The wildflowers, because it was spring. The wildflowers are what we would work very hard in our garden to grow, and there they are, just growing in the bush. uh, things like columbines and things like that. So I really enjoyed that. And I actually love walking to the towns, and got a bit later on in the seasons, the towns that have roses growing over their walls and beautiful flowers everywhere, irises out. Just, yeah, very beautiful, the towns as well. Yeah, I love the whole time. Mostly I was euphoric at least once in the day, and then probably another time in the day I'd be going, what was I thinking? But yeah, I really enjoyed the whole walk.
No, that's fair enough. Now, I meant to ask, via Gebennensis, you're starting off in Geneva. What countries are you in to get you to Le Puy?
Basically, you're only in Switzerland, which is Geneva, for just a few kilometres. I'd say less than 10. And then you're in France, and you stay in France from there on.
Now, again, not being familiar with particularly doing walking crossings, were you just getting a European Union visa that covered you for all these countries, or did you have to go through a passport check, or you just crossed on the trail and that was it?
In fact, I wasn't sure where I passed into France. I obviously did somewhere along the line in the first couple of hours, but definitely no visa checks. And in fact, I didn't need a visa yet. I believe something's coming in the next year or two that you need something from Australia to do that, to do Europe.
Yep.
But I didn't need any sort of visa, just my passport, and I certainly didn't need it going over the border, wherever it was.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. Any trail's got its negatives. Were there any negatives apart from you just having a bad day, or it was pretty good overall?
It was pretty good overall. I didn't find any negatives. I would have liked to have done a shorter first couple of days, and I couldn't find accommodation I would have preferred to have started with, say, 16 Ks for the first 2 or 3 days. I couldn't find accommodation. There actually was accommodation, but I didn't find it. And in France, they prefer you to book ahead, especially if they're doing a meal, and you have to do it, at least book in the morning. But they do prefer you to book 2 or 3 days ahead. So I did do that. You probably would have been perfectly able to have just booked the night before, and it would have been fine. But so that was the biggest negative, which wasn't much really, was it? That I would have liked to have started less kilometres for the first few days. And for me, it wasn't a problem, but for other people, perhaps you might feel a bit lonely, which, as I say, is not a problem for me, but could be for someone thinking of doing the walk.
No, I think that's the thing. A lot of people don't like doing solo. They like having lots of people around them. I'm a bit like you. I'm quite happy to talk to people. I'm quite happy to be by myself. So yeah, I think I suppose it will probably dictate whether you do this trail solo or take someone with you, just depending on what your own personality is like.
Yes. I think perhaps the other thing you might think about, if you're doing, people sometimes do Caminos for spiritual reasons. It's not really a spiritual walk. There are churches certainly you could stop and go into, but you're not going to have the spiritual experience if you're looking for it on other Caminos.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Now, I was going to say, what about buildings? So again, was this part of Europe where there were lots of old buildings along the way?
No, it's small country villages. There are beautiful buildings all along the way. They're not large, but you'll walk into a church and they're just stunning. Or you'll see I think I was in a fortified city. So you'll see a few bits and bobs like that, but all the buildings are pretty pretty gorgeous. The villages are nothing like Australian buildings, so of course you love that. And yeah.
Who would you recommend this trail for?
I will recommend this walk for pretty much all ages. Anyone who likes long distance walking, that it worked for me. As I say, I'm 68. I would be quite happy to have done it when I was 20.
Yeah.
It's that sort of walk. You can walk with a full pack. There is actually opportunities. I believe you can walk with a tent and camp along the way. I didn't investigate that because that wasn't my intention. So a lot of younger people I noticed on the walk prefer to walk with a tent and do that sort of walk. You need to have a little level of fitness. I prepared a little bit before because I'm getting older. When I was younger, I didn't really do much preparation for walks, so I always walk every morning.
Yeah.
I tried to do about 10 kilometres a day in preparation, so a little bit of fitness is really good. It was summer, so I didn't always get that because it's quite hot where I live in summer. Yeah, a little level of fitness and enjoyment of walking, long walk every day.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, that's something I haven't asked you. You mentioned you did this walk in the spring. What was the temperature range throughout the day?
Yes, well, I think I was very lucky, frankly, because I left quite early in spring and it could have been very unsettled weather. It was quite cold. Sometimes walking might start 2 or 3 degrees, but it would always, most days I should say, with one very large exception, most days it would be 16 to 20 degrees during the day. I did have 2 full days of rain. One of them was fine, but the second one, it was icy. And in fact, I walked into a restaurant freezing cold and asked them to call a taxi, which there was no taxi, but they called their dad, who often did this, and he drove me to the end of that day. It was just, that day they had a huge drop of snow on the Alps that were nearby, and I think it was close to sleeting. But in general, it was beautiful, beautiful weather, mostly clear. There were some cloudy days for me, but I may have been fortunate at that time of year. I think it can be very unsettled.
Okay. Now, one final question. What's your next great hiking adventure?
This is so funny. You come back and you're very happy to get home, and within 2 or 3 days you're trying to think of what you're going to do next. I'm quite interested. One of the forerunners in my mind is the Great South Coast Walk from basically Sydney to Malakuta.
Yep.
I'm thinking seriously of that. I will, sometime in the next few years, hopefully, actually go back and do the Gebennensis again, but leave from Lyon and walk to the Puy and then back the other way to Geneva. I believe you can do that, so that'll take a little research, but I think I can do that. But not next year. I think it's probably going to be the Great South Coast Walk.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've been talking with Lindy Saylor about hiking one of the lesser-known Camino trails. Lindy, thanks for taking the time to talk to us about your adventure.
Oh, thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity.
So that was our interview with Lindy Saylor on the Via Gebennensis. And I must admit, for me, I had never heard of this walk before. I'd heard a lot of the Caminos. There's a lot of other walks I'm aware of.
There are a lot of Caminos.
Yeah, I was aware of a lot of the main walks through Europe, but this was one I hadn't come across before. And funnily enough, I'm starting to hear more and more about these secondary walks, for want of a better term, that people are doing, and they're doing for good reason. So in the case of the Via Gebennensis, 350 kilometres from Geneva to Le Puy, and Le Puy, and again, excuse my pronunciation, it's probably not the correct pronunciation on this, is the starting point for the Camino Francis, the Way of St. James. So in this instance through here, it means you can start off at Geneva and end up roughly, in the case of Lindy, 18 days later at Le Puy, and then she continued on. I looked at this trip and I looked at the distances on the website and I thought, yeah, probably 13 days is where I'd be aiming at for this one. The distances between towns, if you ignored the towns and just wild camped, you'd probably be able to do it in a different sort of format. So some days was sort of 13 kilometres, other days was sort of mid-20s. But yeah, and combining 2 days made for really big days. So it's not an overly taxing sort of walk, but still, Lindy, as she said, 350 kilometres in 18 days.
That's a decent walk.
That's a decent walk. And she did say she's 68, so she's obviously a keen walker and done a lot of long-distance walking. Yeah, she said, yeah, obviously tired at the end of the day, but she did enjoy it. Now, we asked Lindy if this was a better off as travelling with an organised group. And I think there are people that do this, but again, it's the sort of thing I struggled to even find the website for this walk.
All the secret's out now.
It took a bit of finding, but I did find it, and that information will be on our show notes if you want to see what that is. There's a few other walks that people have done of their trips, but there is an official site, and it has suggested days for the trip to how you can go through and do it. And again, really what you do is up to you. So in her case, pretty much she was self-guided. She really just took some dehydrated, or she said hiking food with her, and by that she was talking about peanut butter and Vitaweeks. And she said she didn't use them that often, but it was just handy to have. So if she felt like something to eat or the timing wasn't quite right, she always had food with her. And she said she had some of that left over by the end of that trip. So it's not an unreasonable thing to sort of go through and carry. She did say that the timing wasn't always there in relation to food. She said quite often she would actually have breakfast, head off and get some food at the little local stores or the bakeries in the town she was staying in to carry her through for lunch. But yeah, not always an option. So that's where the peanut butter and biscuits come in. Gear-wise, again, nothing particularly special. So she pretty much catered or assumed she was going to be walking and staying in accommodation, whether it be hostels or hotels or homestays. So really, she didn't take a hiking stove. She didn't take a sleeping bag, but took a sleeping bag liner, and I think she said a pillowcase as well. So it really meant that, she was getting into accommodation roughly around about 3 or 4 o'clock, which is where most of the people in that part of France wanted you to sort of check in, not the traditional 2 o'clock we're used to here in Australia. But she didn't, she was carrying around about 7 kilos and thinking that was a lot. So, she's obviously done enough hiking where she can get it down. She wasn't carrying 5 changes of clothes and everything else she needed. Mm-hmm. So she had enough to keep her happy, and, she wasn't carrying anything overly heavy as such. The only other thing she did suggest was she is a hiking umbrella user and she prefers that to a rain jacket, but that's a personal preference. And the hiking umbrellas seem to be a US-based thing. I've never seen any on trail in Australia, and I don't hear a lot about them, but certainly in the US, it seems to be a lot more common, particularly in the more desert climates where there's a bit of heat.
Yeah, that's right.
And of course tracking poles, where she strongly suggested the tracking poles. So she said she's getting a bit older, and the tracking poles really help, and particularly there were some steepish, without being excessive climbs. And if you have a look at the photo on the show notes on this, you can see that she's gone up, or she's above the valley. And, there's obviously going to take a bit of time to get up there, and the trekking poles will certainly help. Terrain, very much a rural sort of area, and I think that's probably the case for a lot of that part of Europe. They're old countries; they've been there for a while. Wild natural areas, not as common as you would think. So, but there were certainly forested areas she walked through, but certainly a lot of rural areas as well. Accommodation, as she mentioned. She said some of the younger people were tenting it, but she opted for staying in accommodation. Now, she was talking around about €50, which is roughly about $100 per night. But she said that wasn't just the accommodation. That got you a dinner and it got you bread and jam for breakfast. And I don't know what it is with bread and jam for breakfast. That's what we've got in South America, because that seemed to be the thing that everyone had. And the South American bread is full of sugar. It really is
It's
sweet.
very sweet.
Yeah,
Very
so
sweet.
we sort of, if we had the opportunity, we opted for something else. And certainly Lindy did say that, if she could find something else, she was getting a bit sick of bread and jam after a while.
Yeah, the bread and jam, the bread anyway in Europe is a little bit different.
Yeah. I think the European bread is actually quite nice. Food-wise, and I suppose she talked about coffee. She's a big believer of always drinking the coffee in wherever you happen to be, and I think Europe is into their coffee. Although she freely admitted to being a coffee snob, but she said she did enjoy the coffee, but she's a black coffee drinker. So I don't know if I'm not a black coffee drinker, so I don't know how to quite cope with that.
Oh well, I will if I'm desperate.
Water-wise, again, she said for the first few days, she'd advised it can be a bit hard to carry water. So she got in the habit of carrying the water for the entire day, which probably would have been 2 or 3 litres, I'm guessing. She didn't mention how much, but it means she wasn't going to run out of water at any stage.
Yeah.
And she did come across spigots, particularly after the first couple of days, water was quite freely available. But it means she didn't have to worry about it and didn't have to sort of chase down water as she was going through the day.
Yeah, I think that's some good planning. Unless you really know, you should always take it.
She mentioned that there was a guidebook, and she said it's a yellow guidebook. And the thing I find really strange is this is a walk that goes through Switzerland and for a very short period and France, yet the guidebook's in German and Spanish. So,
there you go.
So, yeah, really, really strange there. But she said that, she didn't particularly read German and Spanish, but she said the images and the maps were good enough to be able to direct you. Although
I guess that makes sense for Switzerland.
It does, yeah. They're sort of in the middle of that area. And she was saying that where she got lost was trying to get out of Geneva. And I think that's always the case. You're walking through built-up cities, and you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
You miss an arrow or miss a sign, and all of a sudden, you have to think, now, where am I? And get yourself back on track again. But she was saying that's where she had navigational issues, was in Geneva.
That's funny.
Not really so much on the trail. I find European hiking in particular, all the interviews we've done over the last few months of British and European hiking, there definitely is a theme, and the theme is they are late to have breakfast. So breakfast seems to be, in Australia, I will get up and have breakfast very early. I'm normally eating by sort of 5:30 in the morning.
That is way too early.
And she did say she left her accommodation typically about 8 or 8:30, but in some instances, the accommodation won't serve breakfast until sort of 8:30, and by the time you clean up and go, it's sort of 9. But again, if you're not going to be checking into your hotel till sort of 3 or 4 o'clock, not so much.
It's not a big deal.
Not a big issue, particularly if you're not doing huge distances. So I think getting used to the local customs, and again, in France, the stores close for lunch.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and particularly not so much in the big cities, but in the little towns, you want to go to the local supermarket or little shop, and between sort of 11:30, 12 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, tough luck. You've got to time it.
Yeah.
Whereas we're so used to in Australia thinking, I'll go to the shops and grab some food at midday, 1 o'clock. You need to get into the habit of thinking about when these stores are closed.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, to enjoy the culture and to meet the people, you need to be around when they're around. So, starting a little bit later, so that you can have that breakfast and be, walking through the towns in the morning when others are setting up. Getting your lunch a little bit sort of early or a little bit late, again, so you can be part of the community. It's just a matter of, understanding the environment that you're in to take advantage of all that cultural energy that you'll find when people are around.
Now, Lindy did say she started slightly early on this because she was obviously going on to the Camino Frances afterwards, but she was saying it was a bit of a risk. She had some cold days, so you need to cater for that. But she said overall it was pretty good. She only had 2 days that sort of rained most of the day. The rest of it was pretty good weather. And I think that she was saying she didn't see a lot of people on trail. So when you think of the Camino Frances, you think of lots and lots of people.
Lots and lots.
Particularly in the religious years. And often people want that sort of experience because they meet people and make friends on the trail. So it sounds like Lindy, she's quite comfortable doing solo hiking, and she does hike occasionally with other people, but her preference is solo, and she said she found it really good. So I think if you're the sort of person that needs people interaction for a lot of the time, maybe not the best choice, or pick a warmer time of the year into the summertime, particularly when the Europeans are on their vacations and they're out and about and doing their walks as well. I think with this trail, Lindy mentioned there was plenty to see and do. She loved the walk. She said there was nowhere that was really bad as far as the environment was concerned. And she really didn't have much in the way of negatives. You know, the only negative really tends to be that you've got to get used to the shops closing at certain times. But she said it was pretty good there. And the fact that, and again, not really a negative, but they said because they are making dinner for you, they would prefer you to book a day or two in advance, just so that they've got enough food rather than turning up and saying, I'm here, and there's no food in the house to cook. So you've got to be a bit more aware of your planning process to say, well, I'm going to be in this town on this day, and book a couple of days ahead rather than just turning up or if you're a really keen, enthusiastic hiker thinking, oh, I'll skip this town and go on to the next one, you may find the accommodation isn't as readily available. So be aware of that. She did say this trail is pretty much for anyone, experienced hikers or newer hikers. She was saying, you know, she's obviously been walking for a long time and doing a lot of longer walks, but she said she doesn't do much in the way of training, or she didn't when she was younger, but even now she tends to do around about 10 kilometres a day. And, you know, she said she likes to do around about the 20-kilometre mark. And there were some days that were shorter than that, some days that were longer. But, you know, those sort of distances, particularly over 18 days, you start building up your fitness and it becomes quite easy towards the end, particularly if you are launching into the Camino Frances at the end of it. But yeah, she said new hikers, as long as you got the fitness to be able to do the distance, and experienced hikers would all love this. And as she said, we did ask her about the temperature on the trail. She said overall it was pretty good. She had a couple of cooler nights. So I wouldn't necessarily want to do this walk in the middle of winter.
No.
Not in France. So you're even in sort of southern France, you're still going to be getting very cold conditions, particularly as you start getting towards the mountain. So Lindy's next great walk is on the South Coast Track, which is, I was going to say, it's more a route rather than a track. And people do it, but it's starting off just south of Sydney and ending up in Malakuta. So again, it's a long distance
walk. Big track,
yep. Taking a lot of the South Coast coastal areas, and I think it's one of those sort of things that doing an Australian walk. And she said she does want to go back again and do more hiking in Europe, but that'll probably be a couple of years off. From my perspective, I do have the Camino Frances on my hiking to-do list. It will probably be 2 to 3 years off, I'm guessing, at the moment.
He says looking at me for approval, and I've not yet given approval to that one.
But I think from my perspective, and I think Lindy's attitude was the same as well, that if you're paying for airfares and going all
do them all at once.
Do them all at once. So I think, what's 350 extra kilometres
right.
to add to the trip. So I think flying into a city like Geneva, which has got a population of in the hundreds of thousands, would be one of those sort of things that it's a big enough airport. It may well be a bit easier to get into than Le Puy. I do not know, to be honest. But I think, for the sake of adding 350 kilometres to the trip and getting a different experience.
Because 350 kilometres isn't a lot.
No.
Apparently.
Well, again, 2 weeks to 3 weeks, depending on your walking pace.
Yeah.
So as I said, from my perspective, I had a look at the distances and thought 13 days is what I'd be aiming for, and without really stressing everything. So I think that's quite doable. And again, whether you're slower than that, faster than that, really is up to you as an individual. So we hope you've enjoyed this podcast brought to you by the Adventure Gene. And maybe if you are heading over to Europe and looking for a trail that's not huge but still a good distance, the Gebennensis is a good option. Or if you are looking at doing the Camino Francis, just adding an extra 2 to 3 weeks onto your trip and taking this into and making for a longer experience. Okay, that's all for me. We hope you've enjoyed. Bye for now.
And bye from me.